Who is the correct Giants running back to draft in the Fantasy Pros Championship? Is there a sleeper NFC North pass catcher that needs to be bumped up Fantasy Pros Championship draft boards? And how should you attack the Buccaneers running back room in FFPC fantasy football drafts? Plus, six-time FFPC league champ Cacey Taylor drops in for some conversations about Cortland Sutton, Anthony Richardson, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men that need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome to June, ladies and gentlemen. June 7th, 2024. Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of the Bulkaholics and Ferrelliacs tuning in onto the show tonight. Welcome in to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, FFPC at myffpc.com. That is myffpc.com. Excuse me. I'm already getting verklempt. I'm so excited for the show tonight. I am your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, Ferrell and I are going to discuss which 49ers running back you want to draft in your drafts, your Fantasy Pros drafts, your FFPC main event drafts this weekend. We're going to talk about whether 2024 Davante Adams has juice, worth the squeeze, and more before six-time FFPC league champion Cacey Taylor joins us to break down two quarterbacks who have lost a ton of weight coming into the 2024 season, how Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy are affecting a lot of fantasy difference makers in the FFPC this drafting season, and much more. If you want to connect with us on X, do so. I am at Eric Balkman. The show is at HSFF and check out Ferrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. That's KFFSC.com. Post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF and you can email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if the mood should strike you. If you have any questions for us, get them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets or posts, I should say, and emails on the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend Bryce and our producer and mutual friend Rob. If you are looking for some action, fantasy football drafting action, let me tell you something. There is no shortage of it over at the Fantasy Football Players Championship. The Fantasy Pros Championship has drafts filling each and every day. We already have a couple off the board tonight, I think. I'm actually commissioning the midnight draft tonight, which is filling up as we speak. So if you want to register in that, I strongly encourage it because you can win $1 million and you only have to fork over $350 in an entry fee. Bear in mind that you get a $50 discount on your third team that you register. And if you register prior to June 15th and draft prior to June 30th, you're going to get a free $35 FFPC team credit in your account. You can use that on whatever league you like. That is something that will be going on for the next 8 days or so, and you can do it up to 3 times. So check that out at myffpc.com. The FFPC main event already has slow drafts off and running. In fact, we might get in to a certain co-host of the show who may or may not be on the clock in his FFPC main event. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And if you want to get in on that, do so now at myffpc.com. We'll have live drafts coming up later next month, but the slow drafts are going now. If you like best ball, I know a lot of people like to think of now as best ball season, as the kids say. We have a $125 entry into our FFPC best ball tournament right now. And you can get in on that and play for a $300,000 grand prize. If you want to play in the Superflex Best Ball Tournament, That was only a $50,000 grand prize last year. It is now a $100,000 grand prize, and you can enter that for the low price of $35. Again, that's myffpc.com. If you're like me and you like playing fantasy football 365 days a year, go to myffpc.com, sign up for the Dynasty Startup Leagues. We got a boatload of those drafts going off tomorrow. And then the Empire Dynasty Leagues, the only FFPC Dynasty Leagues with the progressive prize pool. In other words, half the prizes are set aside each and every year. And then once one team wins the league in back-to-back years, they win the entire progressive prize pool. The league is disbanded. Everybody gets their deposits back, and you're free to join a new Empire League at myffpc.com. That is my spiel. Those are the leagues you should be signing up for. This is how fun can be had this very first weekend of June. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live here on the FFPC YouTube channel. More to come on that in a little bit. But before I go any further tonight, I have to bring in my co-host with the most. He runs the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship, which you can check out at KFFSC.com. Taking registration for slow drafts, live drafts, in-person drafts in Cincinnati, in-person drafts in Louisville. I can't wait to get to Louisville this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I welcome him in right now, ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, happy June to you. Thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight.
Oh, buddy, thank you. The week is fantastic because you look forward to spending the last hour or so of the work week with Balky. And, the work week really never ends, Balky, in the
right.
business. That was an eloquent disposition of the exact workings of the Empire League. I got to tell you, I think those are going to be continually popular.
I was surprised, I wasn't surprised that we had people sign up for it. I was surprised at how many people are registering for it. We've been selling a lot of those leagues at the FFPC. People love it so far. So if people are loving it, and so many of the great crowd that plays both in the KFFSC and FFPC want to play in it, you might be well served to check it out as well. Because a lot of people who are like-minded like you, not just you, Ferrell, but everybody watching this right now, they're like-minded like you, so you should probably check it out as well. You might have a boatload of fun in it.
And, I think it's a different dynamic, especially in the area of trading. I don't think in our normal dynasty leagues, you bring the same set of principles to this, since you're trying to win, and you're trying to win twice in a row, and you're trying to win now. And so trading, drafting, everything's a little bit different about it. So I think it's a fresh start, and it's pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And like you said, there is a little bit more nuance to trade, nuance to rookie drafts, nuance to free agent signings as well. I think that's all something that we'll explore over the course of the summer, especially when we get questions popping in on this show on the YouTube chat, Facebook, and X. We already got a couple of posts in the YouTube chat. Dave Nowitzki asking about rookie wide receivers. He wants to know where they should be drafted tonight. We'll get into that in a little bit, especially with our guest who we'll bring on momentarily. And then Bill Hollywood simply asked us the very polite question: how are we doing, Ferrell? I think we're doing pretty good.
Thank you, Bill.
I want to bring in tonight's guests right away tonight. Last week we had Drew Jennings on. We made you wait way too long for him.
Too long.
We're not going to make that same mistake this week. We're going to bring him in right now. He's put away 6 league titles in his high-stakes fantasy football career with the FFPC. He's out for more this season as he searches for that $1 million grand prize in the FantasyPros Championship. Please welcome in tonight's guest, Mr. Cacey Taylor. Cacey, welcome in, man.
Hey, Eric. How you doing?
Doing good. Glad to have you aboard tonight. Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. How has drafting season been going for you so far?
I think it's going great. Last year I was a little bit more hesitant to kind of draft like usually I do, like in like my home leagues and everything, thinking like there was like a better way of drafting these higher stakes leagues. So this year I'm a little bit more laser focused and drafting like I usually do, and looking forward to this year.
What do you think the difference is in drafting last year as opposed to this year? Because I've had years like that too, Cacey, where I feel like I'm kind of somewhat dialed in and I'm feeling okay. But then the following year or the year after, there's a certain feeling you get where you're like, you know what? Like you use the term laser focus. And I think that's good because I have had drafts like that where I know I may not be right and I may not hit on all these picks, but I do feel really strong convictions about the picks I'm making. What do you attribute that change to for you this year from 2023 to 2024?
Well, the change for me, as mentioned previously, was so last year I would probably take a chance on a player like I normally wouldn't have, and or I tried like one draft. I think I drafted like 3 tight ends because I know they had like the 1.5 receptions. So I was like, okay, so maybe I need to draft more tight ends, and so this year, I'm more focused on drafting like, one, tight ends where they're supposed to be instead of like reaching for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Thinking I need to do something extraordinary in order to achieve that top prize.
I think when you come to play in the FFPC, Casey, and I think a lot of drafters might be prone to this. You think, oh, I have to really come with a magical plan. And no, if you're a good player at home, you're going to be a good player at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas. You just bring those same principles, and you don't really have to change your game. Sure, you can kick up tight ends a little bit if you want. Here in Kentucky, we have different defensive rules, and if so you want to get your hands on a pretty good defense pretty early, or earlier than you would in the FFPC. But you've got a nice record, my friend. So congratulations on what you've been able to accomplish.
Thank you very much, Ferrell.
Casey, I'm going to ask you about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense in a second, but I do want to lead off with a question from the YouTube chat for Ferrell tonight. It's from our good buddy John Terry, and he wants to know your thoughts on the reports that Chase Claypool apparently looks like the best wide receiver in Buffalo, a team that features Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and Keon Coleman, the pride of Tallahassee and East Lansing. Chase Claypool? Where did this come from, Ferrell? And how much are you buying into these reports here? Because Claypool is basically free in drafts right now.
Well, you've never heard anything out of Buffalo that's incorrect, guys. I don't think either of you ever heard. So you're in a situation where, and yeah, I've been a Chase Claypool fan for a long time. So actually, I'll probably be a fan of him this year since he's free, Balky. That's a good price to pay. My affection with Claypool goes back to when Notre Dame came here to play University of Louisville. I sat next to our good friend Justin McCord. We went out there and looked at the players, and this is the beauty of watching. I spent a whole career looking at athletes, but the beauty of watching a Notre Dame when they run out on the field is you see guys that are just truly NFL players, and that's what you saw from Claypool. And aspects of his career related to his off the field and perhaps his demeanor and perhaps getting on the wrong side of the head coach, because as much as he loves you in Pittsburgh, if you get on the wrong side of him, you're likely to stay on that side of the track. So a new start for him, a good looking ball player. If you want to start spending your 20th round draft pick on Chase Claypool, I would say that there's probably worse ways to spend it.
I look at the mojo on this, and by the mojo, I mean fantasymojo.com, at FantasyMojo on the X. This is where you want to be at if you are playing in the FFPC. Subscribe to fantasymojo.com. Darren Armani runs it. He is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joe's Challenge. He's been a guest on the show many a time. The mojo on Chase Claypool. Over the last 5 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship, drum roll, please. Nope, you don't need one because he's not being drafted. He has not been selected in any draft in the last 5 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Will that change after people watch this or listen to this episode tonight? Only time will tell.
Probably not, because when they want to lean, Ferrell liked the way he looked in a Notre Dame uniform at Louisville. That's not necessarily a reason for people to cue him up.
Yeah, it's a reason. I don't know if it's a strong reason.
I don't think it's going to move the needle. I don't think it's going to move the needle for Mr. Claypool at all. But you know what? When he came on the scene, I remember him coming on the scene with a 30-point game, maybe even bigger. He has a skill set.
I want to talk about a team with you, Casey, that is full of players with dynamic skill sets, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. NFL.com put out a report today about Jalen Hurts talking about the new offense and telling us that Kellen Moore's offense there is 95% different than what they had last year. Yeah. Kellen Moore, as a reminder, a guy that I know I was pretty excited about when he was in Dallas and then when he was in Los Angeles. He was fired by the Cowboys, flamed out with the Chargers, and now he is in Philadelphia, a team that was really under pressure to make some changes either with the head coach or if the head coach was going to stay, the coordinators had to change. The coordinators did change. Kellen Moore in for the offense, Vic Fangio in for the defense. And Jalen Hurts had this quote to say about the offense this year. I think the goal coming in was to learn Kellen's offense and to master it. And I think that's been a process. And by the end of it, I want it to be mine and have it my own way. This is after a recent OTA practice. Hurts is telling the Philadelphia media about this. Kellen Moore had a very conservative Dallas offense. I think Mike McCarthy might have had something to do with it, but they were top 6 in yards in 3 of his 4 seasons as offensive coordinator there. His last year with the Chargers was not good. Now, part of that was Justin Herbert going down. You can't have your starting quarterback miss time and expect not to have a few bumps in the road. Moore is obviously going to be featuring Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia. I don't know if the tush push is going to be as relevant this year. But Casey, I think when we bring this all back in, we bring it into the lead here. 95% of the offense is new in Philly. Does this change at all the way that you're drafting Eagles this year? And quite frankly, how high are you on the offense?
Definitely not. You know, the Eagles are a tremendous offense. I mean, if you go back to last year, I know without Kellen Moore, that first 11, 12 games, they were phenomenal. And then they just kind of dropped off at the end of the year. So this year with Jalen Hurts' quote, you know, you could tell he's very excited about the upcoming year. He's excited about the offense. So that's a great sign right there. You know, there's no fluffiness about it. He's very excited, and I'm sure he's hungry, you know, to attack this year after what happened last year. So, and then, you know, you lose a DeAndre Swift who had a great, kind of surprising year as well. So some very surprising games, but you upgrade to a Saquon Barkley. I mean, besides Christian McCaffrey and Behan, you know, you don't get much better than Saquon Barkley. So that's only going to upgrade the offense anymore and make that offense better. And the offensive line is phenomenal, you know, and so that offense is that definitely it's going to excite me about drafting, you know, an Eagle player this season.
I mean, despite the loss of Jason Kelce, this is the best offensive line Saquon Barkley's ever run behind in the NFL. And Casey, right now, you can get him at the 205 in Fantasy Pros drafts. Saquon Barkley is the 6th running back off the board. Does that scream as a value to you in the mid-second right now?
Absolutely. You get a Saquon Barkley, you know, in the second round. That's an absolute steal. Pretty much. Sometimes you'll see him drafted in the first round, which is definitely understandable. So if you get Saquon in the second round, that's an absolute steal.
That sometimes you see him drafted in the first round is every draft that I'm in. I'll tell you that. You know, Balky goes through a lot of points here, and I have been down on the Eagles until this new hire made me look at it. You can't get down on Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown and Barkley, as you say, and Goddard, who we can talk about in a minute. But you get in a situation, how are they going to look now? And I think everything is going to look different about this team. I think that we're going to see players come in different positions. It was a very static offensive set with what we saw previously. I think we're going to see a lot of motion, and I've always wanted that for Smith. You bring in a player that we've got a frequent visitor to the show, Permar, and I think it was a Permar suggestion, Balky. I could have been wrong. Might have been John Terry. This late round pick out of Florida State, Wilson. There is an interesting player. You look at Goddard and you say, well, this could be the year that Goddard meets his statistical potential. You know, this has always been a better play. And he's missed time for parts of 5 seasons, but this is a guy that's been in the league for 6 years, and I don't think he's caught 60 passes, but all of us can see the skill set in his play. So I'm fired up about this team, and I think that Eagle players will probably, once we see how it looks in the preseason, Eagle players will probably move up the list a great deal. But I think you're spot on for staying with the players, and I think I was behind the curve a little bit. But I think I'll be looking forward to drafting some of those Eagles as well.
Casey, a couple of comments in the chat room, in the YouTube chat room, and I'll highlight Dave Nowitzki's here. Is Saquon Barkley going to be hurt by the tush push? And this is interesting, too, because Kellen Moore did not do this, obviously, in Los Angeles last year. And the Eagles did it a ton last year, but that was with Jason Kelsey. The Eagles did not have a running back as talented as Saquon Barkley. How concerned, if you are drafting Barkley, and I know you said he's a value right now, how concerned are you that he might not get that touchdown volume because of Jalen Hurts and that Eagles offensive line and their ability to score at the goal line with that play?
In my opinion, I think it's the opposite. I think you give the ball to Barkley more for that score instead of Jalen Hurts, to be honest.
And it would make perfect sense. Like I said, Eagles haven't had when's the last time the Eagles had this well-rounded of a running back? I don't know, and maybe it's escaping me right now, but even Brian Westbrook did not have the 3-down capability that Saquon Barkley had. And with apologies to DeAndre Swift, he's no Saquon Barkley. I feel like, what's the vice presidential debate, Ferrell, where like, I knew John Kennedy, I worked with John Kennedy, you are no John Kennedy. I knew Saquon Barkley, I worked with Saquon Barkley, you are no Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift. Let's move on and talk about Saquon Barkley's old team here, Casey. I'm going to kick it over to you about Devin Singletary. Now, according to Coach Speak Index, this is another report that came up today. Brian Daboll says Devin Singletary knows the offense inside and out. He signed with the Giants 3 years, $16.5 million. And you say, Balky, that sounds kind of weird. 3 years, $16.5 million for a running back? Yeah, that's wild because it's Devin Singletary as the running back and not an elite running back, which is weird. Now, well, Ferrell, we'll get to you in a second with this. The offense,
just over here mumbling,
and understanding it is obviously very important for any running back going to a new offense, new OC, new head coach, new everything. He was 13th last year in evasion rate, 9th in yards before contact per rush, 3rd most rushing yards over the second half of the season. Brian Daboll in his OTA press conferences was praising Tyrone Tracy, the rookie out of Purdue, in OTAs. But Singletary is the guy there right now. If we look at the ADP on this, Casey, we are looking at Devin Singletary being selected in Fantasy Pros drafts on average, running back 35 at the 9-11. How do you feel about that ADP with Singletary right now?
I love that because sometimes you get a starter. You can put him. Sometimes you can draft him, and he's the first guy on your bench. You know, so having a starter on the bench is definitely a great, addition to your fantasy team. You know, and then to add a Devin Singletary. I mean, when you're a starting NFL running back, you're not. That's. You definitely have great talent, and he did a phenomenal year in Houston. He took the other running back's job there last year.
Fierce.
And then he's coming from Buffalo, where Daboll and the general manager have that experience working with him, so they know him. So he's not coming to a team where they're just trying him out. They've scouted him. They've watched him, talked with him, so they know him personally, and so I think he's going to have a phenomenal year, and to get him, in that range is definitely a great pick because he could be that first pick on your bench.
And you say if you're in the Giants front office, you say this is our guy, and this is. They've got a lot of pressure there. They've got to win. They say this is the guy we want to win with. And so that makes me believe, just as you do, Casey, that they're going to give this guy every chance to win. And I'll ask you guys anything about Singletary. Have you ever seen anything about Singletary as a competitor with the ball in his hands that you did not like? Because every time that I see him getting an opportunity, he makes the most of it. And that's what's forthcoming for him as an opportunity.
If I draft 100 teams, and you like to have a mix of players, I'll draft Devin Singletary, my first guy off the bench all the time.
You drafting 100 teams this year, Casey?
No.
Well, no, I think you should, and if you are, you need to come to
when you draft that many teams, you want to have a nice mix of players. But
you don't have to be 100, but still, we got teams for you, Casey.
The thing is with Singletary, I never doubt his talent, but I know his talent's limited. And Ferrell, you make a good point about.
Wait a minute, what did you just say?
I believe Singletary's talent is limited.
Limited to what?
Limited to being a 9th-round pick. I don't think he's going to punch much above
He's
his weight at that
limited
point.
to how many times they gave him the ball at Houston and how many times they gave him the ball at Buffalo. What we're saying is he will generate more carries here, more catches, more touches, more success.
I will be happily pleased because I do own some Devin Singletary dynasty shares. I will be happily pleased if that comes to fruition. I am not quite. I mean, I don't hate him this year. Obviously, 9th-round pick. It's hard to hate a 9th-round pick. I don't think I love him as much as you guys do, but I could be wrong on this. It's happened once or twice before.
All you need is a little Singletary.
All you need is a little Singletary. That's right. Ferrell, let's talk about this New York Times report about Dan Dugan talking with an anonymous assistant coach with the Giants, keeping it on the Giants tip, that Malik Nabers could be like Odell Beckham this year in 2024. This assistant coach said that while Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze were more polished, pro-ready wide receivers, Nabers can, quote, catch a slant and run for 80. Nabers could be like Odell early. Throw him a hitch or a slant, and he's gone. He's got that type of talent. Now, an unnamed NFL executive agreed with this Beckham comparison here. He was 9th in the nation last year in yards after catch, 3rd in yards per route run, and obviously they don't have a ton with target hogs in New York. Nabers should be that guy. Now, here's the issue with him, and this is the only problem I have with Malik Nabers right now, and it's no fault with his. Wide receiver 19 at the 403, Ferrell. That is awfully high for Nabers. Now, if he plays like Odell Beckham, that's a steal. The question is, will he play like Odell Beckham?
Well, we got to look at who Odell Beckham had throwing the ball, and we got to look at who's throwing the ball for the Giants now, and then we got to look at the fact that if he can play like Odell Beckham, he's going to have to be able to shed the defender with that very, very first step, put his foot in the ground, show a burst to the middle of the field. He's got to catch it before he outruns everybody else. There's a lot of things there that I don't believe in for this rookie player as a 4th-round pick. So I'll let someone else make that choice. I'll let them be right. If they are right, I don't think they're going to get much more than any other safer, more conservative, more tried and true 4th-round wide receiver would give me.
What about you, Cacey? I mean, do you feel okay with Nabers at the 403, or is that too high for you as well?
That's a little too high. I do have him on one of my fantasy teams, and I'm not sure if I got him at the 4 or the 5, but I'm excited only because, there's a tremendous upside. One thing that stuck out with me with him was he's the number 1 receiver all time at LSU. So he's ahead of Odell Beckham. He's ahead of Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. And so that's no laughing matter. He's the number 1 receptions, number 1 in yards. And, it's kind of unfair to, obviously he's going to, get that comparison to Odell, but he's Malik Nabers. You got to kind of have to, kind of wait and see with him. And, there's still a growth opportunity. He's 21 years old. So obviously he's only going to get better, which is a little scary. So he could, pull off a CJ Stroud and just kind of, wow, and become like, maybe break all kind of rookie records, who knows? And Daniel Jones could throw, he's just inconsistent, but I know everybody's going to say, Daniel Jones, but I mean, if he stays healthy and somehow, stays mentally clear for the entire year, they could have a phenomenal year. And I think Giants have I know they're not, the tremendous team, but I think they have a very sleeper wide receiver core. They got a nice group of wide receivers, and I could definitely break out this year, especially, but it's like you all said, it's who throws the ball. So, as Danny Dimes goes, so does Malik Nabers and the rest of the group.
I think and you bring up something interesting there. We go back to the Philly example, and I saw this on stat watching one of the shows, and I wasn't aware of it, and nobody had said a thing about it. And we do celebrate the offensive line with Philadelphia, but when they blitzed the Eagles, when the opposition blitzed the Eagles last year, they were 32nd in production when they had to deal with the blitz. That same situation to me is kind of what Jones sees. Then the game comes at him real fast. And I like this player. Same reason I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Jones got to get rid of the ball and get the ball in players' hands. and that's a big part of wide receiver success. And man, you are right. If you're going to do it in college, you might as well do it at LSU, and you might as well break everybody's records that's done it before. So, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and Casey, I'm glad you brought up the collegiate aspect, because people will say, well, I mean, Malik Nabers had a Heisman Trophy for quarterback throwing to him and Jaden Daniels. Well, Chase and Jefferson had a Heisman Trophy quarterback and Joe Burrow throwing to him. And you say, well, you look at Nabers, he had all that pressure being taken off him with Brian Thomas on the other side of the field, a first-round pick. Well, Chase was a first-round pick. Jefferson was a first-round pick. So I think Beckham played with Landry, obviously. And Beckham was help me out, Ferrell. The quarterback there, was that Zach Mettenberger back in the day that was throwing to Landry and Beckham?
True.
Okay, yeah. So I mean that's kind of the outlier in this, but there's a lot of similarities between what Nabers did at LSU and the surrounding talent around him. But he put up better numbers than Chase and Jefferson, so that's something to keep in mind here for sure going forward. There's been an eruption of Vikings running back chat in the YouTube chat right now, and I want to get to that right now. Hudson Kern-Reeve, our resident Ivy League professor, brought this up. Vikings offensive lineman Harrison Phillips today, according to a report in The Athletic, said the Vikings have two true number one running backs in Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Now, Chandler, 94 carries, 419 yards, 3 touchdowns. That was in the last 8 regular season games for the Vikings last year. He also had 16 catches in those 8 games for 116 yards. They bring in Aaron Jones from the Packers, and you would think he's going to be the number one running back. Why wouldn't he be? I think he's more talented than Ty Chandler. However, and people forget about this too, and Casey, I'm in Northeast Wisconsin here, so I'm in the midst of Packers country. Aaron Jones had 3 significant injuries last year. One in the season opener against the Bears, and then he missed a month. And then he had another significant soft tissue injury in the middle of the season, missed a ton of time. He came back. He had those 500-yard rushing games to end the season. But bear in mind, in that divisional playoff loss to the Niners, had the Packers held on and won that game, Jones wasn't playing against the Lions in the NFC Championship game because he got a significant soft tissue injury that game as well. Probably would have knocked him out the rest of the season. He's 29 years old. There's a lot of stuff to be worried about here. Ferrell, I'm going to pitch this to you first before I let Casey weigh in on it. Ty Chandler is going in the 12th round right now in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Aaron Jones is going much higher. He is a running back 18 at the 5-6 turn. Ferrell, for the price, who would you rather have this year if you'd only have one Vikings running back, Aaron Jones or Ty Chandler?
Now I'm going to stick with Aaron Jones. Ty Chandler's interesting. But, yeah, if I've got to have one there, I'm going to go with Aaron Jones.
Casey, how do you feel about this Vikings running back situation?
I don't think there's any comparison. I think you definitely go with Aaron Jones over Ty Chandler. I don't see Ty Chandler ever putting up 5 consecutive 100 games, and I think Aaron Jones is one of those most underrated running backs in the league. When the knock on him obviously is injuries. So if he could stay healthy, definitely you go with Aaron Jones, but you definitely want Ty Chandler, as that handcuff,
On the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show last night with Ryan Reynolds from Establish the Run and Player Profiler, I said if you told me that Aaron Jones was going to be healthy for all 17 games this season, he'd probably be a second-round pick, right? Like, we don't draft him at the 5-6 turn because we doubt his talent. We draft him at the 5-6 turn because we know how the aging process works in the NFL, and we know that this is a guy that has dealt with a lot of significant injuries over the years. If you hit on him and if he's healthy for the majority of the season, you're going to be loving life. But if he pulls another 2023 season with the Packers, you're probably not going to like that pick. But you're also going for $1 million. You do have to take some chances here and there. And I think Aaron Jones might be – I've said for years, Ferrell, you know this. Like, I always said Aaron Jones was an undervalued player. I was trying to get him everywhere. And this could be another year where that happens. Maybe it's my Packers fandom. I don't know if I'm drafting him as much as you guys are, but things could change over the course of a summer. You never know how that's going to happen. Speaking of the Vikings, and we can blow by this because it sounds like coach speak, but Casey, I'll pitch this to you first. New York Times report today said the Vikings coaches were, quote, blown away by Robert Tunyon's workout. This is Alec Lewis's report in The Athletic. The Vikings signed him in mid-May, and this is based on, and I think it's had a lot to do with this, TJ Hawkinson, who tore his ACL last year, And I've been kind of down on him all season. I feel like people have been drafting him like he's going to be ready for week 1, and I'm not sure he's going to be. He's also catching passes this year from Sam Darnold / JJ McCarthy as well, which we'll get into in a little bit. But apparently in OTA sessions, Sam Darnold's been throwing to Tonyan a lot. JJ McCarthy's been throwing to him quite a bit as well. He's 30 years old, and obviously if he's out there for the first couple of months of the season, this is a player that you can probably deploy, again, in a tight end premium format as maybe a fringe second flex, as a guy that you could put out there once the bye weeks hit, coming up in early October. When Hockenson comes back, I don't know how much value he has. When you look at where he's going right now, and it's not high, Casey, but if you look in the Fantasy Pros Championship, he's basically free right now. Your thoughts on Robert Tonyan? Is this just coach speak? And I guess the more important thing to ask you is, because they're so effusive in their praise about Tonyan, is this bad news for TJ Hawkinson's injury recovery if we read between the lines?
That's another great point. I think I read something somewhere where TJ was, I guess, expected back healthy by week 6, I believe. That's where you can kind of expect him, possibly week 1. So Tonyan to me doesn't excite me. I'm not drafting him at all. You just kind of have to wait and see with him, but that he does not excite me at all, especially with the quarterback situation. I mean, all the ball's going to go to Jordan or Justin, and that. No, he does not excite me at all as far as drafting him in any of my leagues.
Casey, I'm right there with you, because we cannot encourage Balky to bring up these ex-Packers and current Packers. He's going to have you talking about the Packers' third-string tight end, because he hosts a terrestrial radio show in northeast Wisconsin.
Right.
It's in Wisconsin, is what you got to know. is what you got to know about it. And another thing here, as we build towards the midnight draft, I think everyone should go join that. I'd like to say hello to Thomas Glaze, who plays in Kentucky. Yeah, you'll meet him, Casey, when you come out this year. And Thomas Glaze was saying, get in that draft there, and everybody. And Hudson Kern Reed,
3 spots left.
Hudson Kern Reed says he's tempted, but he's not going to make it tonight. Too much Zinfandel with the girlfriend. Now, I'm glad to see that the professor is going to the top shelf and bringing in the Zinfandel. So what we're going to have to do is get a whole new liquor cabinet for the professor when he comes down this year, because, if he'll follow our lead, he not only would he not be able to draft at midnight, he wouldn't be able to draft next Tuesday, but he's got it wrong. The Zinfandel, the girl needs better than that. But that's the side point. Anyone who's drinking Zinfandel would probably draft Chase Claypool at this point.
And that's what John Terry said. You can take Robert Tonyan right after you take Chase Claypool.
Terry is a negative man. He's a negative man. He's not going to get negative with Casey. How tall are you, Casey?
I'm 6'3".
See, that's what I said. He's not going to get negative with Casey. He's going to pick on you and me, but he's not getting negative with
Casey. New York Times report today as we continue that Viking stuff that's going on. Apparently, the coaches there want to take it slow with JJ McCarthy. Alec Lewis, who, again, did this report for The Athletic, said that in yesterday's practice, McCarthy was much more accurate than he had been earlier in the week when he missed not deep throws, like routine throws, while trying to get his footwork straight as they try to make an NFL quarterback out of him. Lewis said the Vikings coaches want to develop some confidence in McCarthy to try him to make throws and eventually make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. Kevin O'Connell thinks that is the best way for McCarthy to have long-term success, and it seems like everybody is buying into that same philosophy. Sam Darnold, he's been taking all the first-team reps at OTAs, and apparently he's showing good chemistry with not only Justin Jefferson, but Jordan Addison as well, and it sounds like he's going to be on track to start week 1 and maybe going forward from that. I guess the question I have for you is, knowing that Darnold is probably starting the season, but knowing that McCarthy is the eventual answer there, how is that affecting the way that you're drafting? Maybe not necessarily Justin Jefferson, but guys like Jordan Addison or Aaron Jones or Hawkinson, knowing that we could see a quarterback transition at some point this season.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to draft Jordan Addison. I'm not hesitant to draft Justin Jefferson. I think he's a little high. You know, he should be, I mean, a little low, too low, I should say. Should be drafted higher, I think. Definitely. I think he should be above Jamar Chase. Personally, based on like last year with Mullins, you know, I guess he almost had like the 200-yard game with him and Mueller or whatever. And
Nick Mullins.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And so you definitely have an upgrade there with Sam Darnold. But I was on the JJ McCarthy bandwagon. I thought he was gonna, you know, possibly, you know, be there week one maybe. But looks like based on the reports, they you know, he might not. I don't think there might not be a transition based on that report. I think Sam Darnold's gonna probably be there, you know, for the whole year, and that transition will probably take place next year. You know.
Yeah, and that when I saw the Vikings trade up for McCarthy at the draft party I was at for my radio station, one of our listeners said, "Oh, McCarthy's starting week one. You don't trade up for a quarterback in round one unless you're starting in week one." And I'm like, pulling my Steve Harvey out. Slow your roll, player, because I thought Darnold was going to be the guy. McCarthy he doesn't have the reps, and he wasn't asked to do enough in college for me to believe that McCarthy is going to be the guy. Right away, even in October. Like I thought if the transition happens, it's going to be November and December. I'm kind of with you, Casey. I don't know if it happens in 2024. It might be a 2025 thing, and that might be the best thing for the Vikings to do, quite frankly. I think Darnold kind of gets a bad rap a little bit as well, but the fact that he's had this good chemistry with those pass catchers in Minnesota thing, I think is a good thing right now, and we'll see how that goes going forward. I want to switch it up to the Buccaneers backfield for you, Ferrell, here. Liam Cohen, who is taking Dave Canales' place as the OC in Tampa. He was talking up Bucky Irving and how he was able to accelerate through the hole. This is according, again, to the Coach Speak Index report that came out today. Cohen says, the nice thing I like about Bucky is he gets to his top speeds early. Like when he accepts the handoff, he bursts and accelerates through the hole and can make people miss in space. He's got a 4.55 40 time, which isn't ideal for a running back his size. He's 5'9", could be a big play type guy. He's caught a lot of passes in college. He could catch passes in the pros. And I think the head coach in Tampa, was it Todd Bowles, right? Wasn't it him who was kind of like, I don't want to say he was throwing Rachaad White under the bus, but when they were talking about him earlier this offseason, he was kind of pointing out a lot of the things that Rachaad White didn't do well enough last year. And he's kind of talking about how Bucky Irving could be the type of player that does some of those things right this year. When you look at the ADP for these guys right now, Rachaad White in the FantasyPros Championship, Ferrell, running back 13 at the 406, whereas you can get Bucky Irving, the Oregon Duck product, running back 57 at the 1410. I think the distance between those guys shortens up, and I think it shortens up significantly as we go throughout the summer. Right now, I think Irving is the better buy over White. Farrell, your thoughts?
Okay. In White's situation, what you always want in a coaching, in a locker room and a camp is you want a player that pushes your vet. You want him to push him to be better. You want him to have his best football still in front of him. When you talk about where we are in the season, how do you look at a player and say all these great things about him? Well, you saw him on film, but you can, burst is something you can see in all elements of training camp. You can see that step and movement. It's all about movement skills. Sometimes you can see it with less guys on the field, 7-on-7. And maybe not even pads, you can see it more. Who are the great backs that have burst? It's all the guys we love in fantasy football, and that's exactly what you're right about, Bucky, that when you see this player play in preseason, Chubb, Pollard, the guy in New England.
Stevenson.
Eckler prior to his injury. Walker. Now at Seattle. All those guys have that significant burst. It's what makes them go high. It's what makes everybody say, oh, well, Pollard is so much better than Ezekiel Elliott because he's got that burst. Well, that burst won't carry you through an entire game, but that burst can make the difference. And the greatest cutback runner with burst ever was LaDainian Tomlinson. There's certain players that can come that you're very excited. So my answer is this. I don't know what he's going to do, and I don't know how much time White's going to seed him on the field, but fantasy players are going to draft him earlier if the coaches are right about this burst, and I suspect they are.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like It's not like he has to beat out a Tomlinson level player. This isn't Braylon Allen trying to get snaps from Breece Hall. This is not Elijah Mitchell trying to get snaps from Christian McCaffrey. This is Bucky Irving trying to get snaps from Rachaad White.
Where did White go in the drafts last year? Do you guys remember?
Yeah, I don't remember offhand, but I can definitely bring that up right now, because this is one of the great things about Fantasy Mojo is you can actually go back and look at previous years.
Well, that Armani is captured lightning in a bottle.
Right.
But the thing about it was where I had White and the teams that I had him last year, I played him and he did well. Casey, in your 100 teams, did you have White?
I had White.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. That's I think he's got a good player in White, and I think he's pushing White. And he probably knows the personality of his player. He's going to get under his skin a little bit. And that's what coaches do sometimes.
I like White. I like him. I think if Bucky Irving was, and obviously the team and people are high on Bucky Irving. But if he was on like Carolina, pushing Chuba Hubbard and what they got going on, then obviously, he could definitely push for that number one spot, or like one of these other lesser teams. But as far as Tampa Bay, I don't think he's taking over Rachaad White's spot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Rachaad White can put up for some phenomenal games sometimes. Sometimes he's sleep just like any other running back, but he puts up some big games.
Yeah. I think the thing to keep in mind, and I don't want to come off as a Rachaad White hater because I'm not. Matthew Berry from Fantasy Life, he always says, I don't hate players, I hate ADPs. And that's the question I have, like with Rachaad White, is does he have, like, is he going to put forth the type of season? And, whether it's, in spite of or,
certain games he's gonna be worthy of that spot. Definitely.
John Terry just gave factual positive information. You're going to have to fact check that, Balky, but it is positive. That John Terry is coming. That's impressive.
I'm not fact checking John Terry. He knows.
You're not going to fact check him?
No, I totally trust him.
His White was running back 5 last year, so
right.
I guess we were right about that.
The thing with White, but this goes back to the whole ADP argument. Is like I loved his ADP last year. Like I definitely had a good number of Rachaad White teams last year. To bring this up of where he was going, the final weekend of FFPC main event drafts, like going into week 1 last season, we have a sample size of about 76 leagues, I think, that went off that last weekend. Rachaad White, running back 22 at the 603. Now that's where he was going last year. Now, if we look at his ADP this year, and maybe I'll be eating crow on this, maybe not. Running back 13 at the 406. So instead of 21 running backs going in front of him last year, he's only got 12 running backs going in front of him this year. Instead of going in the early 6th round last year, he is now going in the mid 4th round this year. Could he pay off? Yes. And there's certainly a point to be said with what Casey's saying. Certain weeks, and I totally agree with you, he will pay off certain weeks. Like he is going to have, it's not like Bucky Irving is going to be this threat that comes in to be like a 1A and 1B situation. I don't think Bucky Irving has the frame to be a 1B in this league. I think he could mess things up for Rachaad White. But I still think White is, as much as they've been praising Irving and kind of pointing out the flaws in White, I still think that they want White to be the guy this year as well. Casey, let's go out to Denver. Mike Kliss, who covers the Denver Broncos, said that he asked Courtland Sutton about whether he's going to attend the mandatory minicamp in Denver next year. Courtland Sutton said he's going to be there. He was the subject of trade rumors earlier this offseason. He had 59 catches for 772 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, and he wants a new contract. He's been skipping voluntary OTAs, and whether he signs a new deal with Denver or whether they decide just to let him go to free agency, that remains to be seen yet. Sutton is supposed to be the number 1 receiver for Denver this year and Bo Nix's top target, but you do have Marvin Mims on this team. No longer do you have Jerry Jeudy on this team, but you do have Troy Franklin as well. Casey, right now, Courtland Sutton, wide receiver 49 at the 1001. That's the price for the number 1 receiver in Denver. When you consider that he is going in the same territory as Brian Thomas, Curtis Samuel, and Tyler Lockett, does that strike you as a price that you want to be in business with Courtland Sutton in 2024?
No, because I don't see any upside with him. You know what? You know, the big thing that strikes out to me was the 10 touchdowns, and I don't see him matching that again. You know, that's tough. You know, he's he's not. If he gets the 10 touchdowns again, then yeah. You know, but I don't see it. You know, and plus you don't know what you're going to get with Bo Nix. So, you know, leaving Russell Wilson, you know, I was his favorite target last year. Who knows? He might fall in love with Mims or Franklin. You know, those to me are more exciting picks out of Denver than Cortland Sutton right now.
Casey, do you bump up Franklin a little bit on your draft boards because Nix and him were collegiate teammates at Oregon?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They know each other. So I can definitely see that translating on the professional level.
Best ball player for me, Cortland Sutton. Best ball player for me.
And I could see that too. You know, and I'm with Casey. I'm with you on this. Like the 10 touchdowns, that's not a sticky stat. I don't know how repeatable that is. If you told me Sutton scores 1 touchdown this year, I wouldn't at all be shocked by that. You know, to go from 10 to 1, especially in that offense, new quarterback, new everything there. So I think there is a reason to be very cautious with Cortland Sutton this year. Cautious is not the way Anthony Richardson plays football.
No.
Anthony, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. He already said, despite this shoulder injury last year, he's not changing the way he plays football, which as a fantasy owner could be good. It could be bad. Here's the bad part. It is June 7th, 2024. He's already dealing with soreness in his right shoulder, according to Ian Rappaport. He was participating in team drills, but he was throwing with his left hand as opposed to his right hand. Now, Shane Steichen, as any good head coach would do, downplayed the severity of the soreness that he's experiencing right now. He's saying that Richardson feels well enough that if this was a game, if it were that time of the year, Richardson would be in there. This is something we're going to be talking about all summer. This is something we're probably going to be talking about in the fall as well. He only played 4 games this past year. Short, small sample size, but he did average 27.4 fantasy points per game in the 2 games he played from kickoff to the final whistle last year, not including the games he left early. Ferrell, this is weird because if you look at the ADP right now for Richardson, only 5 quarterbacks are going above him. He's going as quarterback 6 at the 609, behind Lamar Jackson, behind CJ Stroud. He is going ahead of Murray, Burrow, Prescott, and Jordan Love. I can see the upside here, and I know you don't want to draft scared. I would never tell anybody to draft scared, but quite frankly, I am more than a little scared about drafting Anthony Richardson in the 6th round right now.
Yeah, and I guess if you want him, that's where you're going to have him. And so if he's throwing the ball left-handed, that makes me think he's got a lot of scar tissue in that shoulder. And maybe he didn't see the chiropractor. There could be a lot of scraping going on. Who knows? This is a 250-something pound quarterback. This is an impressive physical specimen. He's going to continue to play the game his way, which the offensive coordinator can stem that a little bit. But I understand who he wants to be and who he is, and good for him. That's who they drafted. I traded for him, and I gave up a 1st-round pick for him in Dynasty because I can see where we're going, and I like the player. But that 5th-round pick, there's just no need to spend that on him there. He's not going to score that many more points consistently in front of some of the guys that you mentioned who are going behind him. I don't think.
You know, this and Casey, this is weird for Anthony Richardson, right? Because he is going in this kind of it's not the quarterback dead zone, but this is after the elite guys go. This is after Allen and Mahomes and Hurts and Jackson and Stroud. Then Richardson's off the board, and he's ahead of those other guys I mentioned. But you know, he's going at the 609 on average. The next quarterback after him is Kyler Murray 2 rounds later. CJ Stroud goes about a half round ahead of him. So he's kind of like in a tier by himself. If you're a volume drafter, yes, you want to get Richardson on your teams. How do you feel about how much volume is the right volume for Richardson this year?
I think that's a great spot for him. You know, I know, I don't mean to disagree with you, but I mean, he shocked everybody last year. I mean, who knew he's going to put up those kind of numbers? And so this year, you know, with the injury and he has the soreness, But they're confident with him, and I honestly don't think he's gonna run I think he's gonna play it a lot more smart. I know he wants to. Obviously, he's a baller and he's a football player, and he wants to run as he did last year. But I think the coaches are gonna hold him back, and he's gonna be more of a thrower. So I think it is a tough. I think Joe Burrow should probably go before him. I'm a big Joe Burrow fan, so when healthy. So I think, you can't. I'm one of my one rules. I try not to draft with injuries. So I look at if Joe Burrow's fully healthy and Anthony Richardson's fully healthy, and he's possibly gonna tone down that running that he did last year. I think you take maybe a Joe Burrow, and then there's a debate of whether to take Kyler Murray, or Anthony Richardson, based on the upgrade of the offense this year and, McBride's upside. So,
yeah,
that's a tough, you can't, that's one of those, we probably can't go wrong unless he gets hurt. So if he's totally healthy,
yes,
at that spot, that's fine.
And totally healthy for Joe Burrow means that he's not on crutches. That's right. If there are no crutches, he's like, all right, that's good as it gets.
Getting back to the Anthony, I don't want to dwell on this, but Jordan Dajani from CBS Sports had a report on Anthony Richardson's weight. Anthony Richardson was on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week, and Richardson says he's about 255 pounds. He was listed at 244 pounds on the Colts website, but he said he played about 250 last year. To put that into context, Cam Newton, 245 pounds, Ben Roethlisberger, 240, Dante Culpepper, 260 pounds. He was asked if he put on this weight in order to sustain some of the hits this year that he took last year. Richardson said no. So maybe this is just a natural, trying to bulk up, trying to get as much muscle on his body as possible. I don't know. The thing that surprised me, and Cacey, that you brought this up, I did not think he was going to be as polished of a passer as he was in the games I saw last year. Anthony Richardson, I thought, was more of a gimmick quarterback, that they were going to trot him out there and they're going to, meld the offense to fit his skills. And then I saw him with Michael Pittman and I saw him with Josh Downs. And I'm like, you know what? This I did not give this guy enough credit for how good of a passer he is. And while I wouldn't put him in the upper echelon of the NFL, I don't think he's close to that yet. You definitely see the tools there. You definitely see the ceiling that he could develop into that. And when you figure in a big rocked up body that can take pounding from linebackers and maybe carry the ball 8-9 times a game, there's something there, especially when you're gunning for $1 million grand prize.
It's a recipe for success, Paul.
Yeah, it is. It is. It absolutely is. Ferrell, let me ask you this, and I don't know if we need to dwell on this a whole lot, but David Lombardi from The Athletic had a report this week that Elijah Mitchell is the clear number 2 running back behind Christian McCaffrey. This is based on what Lombardi saw at OTAs and minicamp. Mitchell is the handcuff to own behind Christian McCaffrey. This will be his 4th year in the league, and he's appeared in just 27 games in his first 3 seasons because he's no stranger to the training table as well. 75 carries, 281 yards, and 2 touchdowns last year. Most of that was in the final 2 weeks of the season when the Niners had everything wrapped up and they basically put McCaffrey in mothballs. This is more of a Christian McCaffrey question, Ferrell. I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but it's a little unsettling for me to draft McCaffrey as high as he's going, given how healthy he was last year. I know McCaffrey is a superhuman. I know that what he is able to put his body through and still come away not unscathed, but being able to rebound a week later and play really well. I don't necessarily know if that's sustainable, even for a guy as talented as him and with an athletic profile as impressive as his is. So this is just me playing the odds here, but I don't know if I want to invest in McCaffrey early, which makes me think if I don't want that, I should want Elijah Mitchell later in drafts. If I don't believe that Christian McCaffrey is going to be the pinnacle of health like he was in 2023, I should be looking at Elijah Mitchell in a lot of my drafts in the 14th round where he's going as running back 56. How flawed is my thinking, or how much do you agree with it?
I don't agree with any of that at all, Bucky. Considering that it is coming from you, I have to give it a thought. And so I'm going to listen to Mr. Lombardi, because when anybody named Lombardi talks about football, I pay attention. I don't, so that's one thing. Second thing is McCaffrey. I have a theory about drafting McCaffrey.
Okay.
If he's on the board when I'm picking, I pick him. That's my theory. And when I've deviated from that theory, I have not done as well as I would have done if I had McCaffrey. I do not believe that there is any player in the NFL that takes better care of his body now that Tom Brady is retired than McCaffrey. However, I am a Mitchell fan, and your thought process is good. You've opened up a lot of thought processes in me tonight, Balky, that makes me want to embrace the concept of the handcuff, something that I don't regularly do. But you're pointing out these great variations in between what I consider to be two very good players. Mitchell is a very good running back, and he can make things happen with that role. So well, Billy Hollywood's agreeing with you. So I think
I'm not saying I'm right.
I think we can disagree, Balky, without being disagreeable.
Right. Yeah.
So there we go.
Derek Greer.
Derek Greer's playing in Kentucky this year, Balky.
Yes, he is, which is awesome. Former guest of the show a couple of weeks ago. He's been chiming in about the Anthony Richardson talk here tonight. But what I want to do here, Casey, is I want to wrap things up with a special treat because Ferrell is on the clock in his FFPC main event right now. He is sitting at what pick is this? This would be the 508. Yeah, 1208. Beg your pardon. 1208 right now. He is on the clock. Now, I don't have a good way to display it right now. But Ferrell, your team so far, Mahomes at QB. Your backfield is Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, David Montgomery, and Nick Chubb. You got wideouts of Michael Pittman, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and Jacoby Myers. Your tight ends, Ferguson and Freiermuth. You are on the clock right now at the 12:08. Before Casey weighs in on this, who are you thinking about selecting here?
You know what? I'm drafting this team with a good friend, Rich Bates from Balky. And
so which eagle is he looking at here?
Yeah, he probably wants an eagle if he can all get one. And I'm fooling around with the idea, if he's still available, of Pearsall, which I think I might be a round or two early. And I've got to dig in on it because I've been on the clock. I'm kind of like Casey with his 100 teams. I've been on the clock since January, I think. So and then on Friday night, it takes a lot of time. And if you notice, so to answer your question, I don't have a compelling answer for you. I'd like to throw it to Casey, and I'd like to get his opinion. And we talked about this on the show last week, and you talked about where Chubb was going, is that he would be a bargain based in the 11th round, which is where it took Chubb. And, the thought is that he will make it back this year. And I looked at the two backs that we had. Rich wanted Hall, and I came back with Henry. They have bye weeks in week 12 and 14. So I thought, well, if Chubb's going to get back, if Chubb is going to get back, then this is perfect for me. So that's really the pick that was the logic I used with that. And I guess if I'm on the clock, I'm probably ticking down. So I'm going to have to select with a little less logic. Maybe Rich has sent me a text with who he wants, and I can bail on it.
I just posted. It's not the greatest format, Casey, but I just posted in the chat tonight with what Ferrell's team looks like right now, separated by position. Pearsall, for what it's worth, this is a 12:08. Pearsall is going at the 15:02 on average. So while I can't say it's a bad pick, it would be a little bit of a leap here for your number 5 receiver. You might be able to get him in either of your next two picks, but maybe not. You never know. It's the main event. You got to get your guys. As you look at Ferrell's squad here, it's pretty balanced, Casey, with a couple of tight ends. He's already got Mahomes, 4 running backs, 4 receivers. I don't think there's necessarily a need on this team. If this was your squad, what would you be looking at here in the 12th round?
Definitely not running back. So that's for sure. You got tight ends. So I would definitely to me though, the wide receiver position, I like Pittman. I like Ridley. I don't like DeAndre. I'm not a big DeAndre fan. As he gets another year older. So I would be looking at wide receiver here personally.
That's what we're going to do. And you know what? Yeah, that's a whole damn roster right there of guys that you can say that I'm trying to squeeze one more year out of, with the exception of Hall. And we've been misquoted, Balky. Our wine swiller up there with his Zinfandel. The quote was, "We can disagree without being disagreeable." Hudson Kern.
Accurate.
I might have stolen that from John Wooden, but that's all I'm saying.
You look at it right now as far, like as Cacey points out, as far as receivers go that are going in this range, you have Shakir in Buffalo. I mean, Mike Williams in New York too. I'm not a huge fan of Rashid Shaheed in a managed format, but I get why some people would. I know there's a lot of people were burned on Jahan Dotson last year, but I think there's some bounce back potential there. And then you get Brandon Cooks, Joshua Palmer, Dontavian Wicks. I think it's a little bit too early. You could go with another Colts receiver, but you already got Pittman, so I'd probably stay away there. I don't know. I mean, you could go with Jermaine Burton, but again, I think that's a little bit. I mean, if you're going to take Burton, you might as well take Pearsall at that point. So there's a lot of.
And there was a question about rookie wide receivers to start the show, and so I'm lining up for Malachi Corley. So there you go.
Yeah, but Corley you can get super late. Like
not with these guys. I just told them who I'm picking. They'll pick just to spite me.
So who's the pick going to be here, Ferrell? Do you know, or do you have to?
I do not know.
Okay.
I do not know, but I can assure you that with the help that we've got here from Mr. Cacey Taylor, that it will be the best wide receiver I can lay my hands on.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing remember the old soap, not a sitcom, but with Richard Mulligan and Catherine Hellman and Billy Crystal, like where they do the cliffhangers at the end of every episode.
Yeah, it's a cliffhanger.
Well, will Ferrell and Rich Bates take Ricky Pearsall? Will they take a different receiver? all those stories and more on the next episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. And we will answer that on the next HSFF hour as well. Cacey, you have been a trooper tonight, hanging out with us for more than an hour. So much good stuff from you. Very informative, very entertaining. Congratulations on all the success you've already had in the FFPC. Good luck bringing home that $1 million grand prize this year as well. This was a lot of fun, man. Thank you so much for hopping aboard. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. It was a pleasure.
That's awesome. Thank you, Cacey. Be good. We'll talk to you soon. That is Cacey Taylor, ladies and gentlemen, the 6-time FFPC league champ, joining us here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour tonight. So much fun, Ferrell, that I think we achieved a lot. We got through a lot tonight, and hopefully we helped the viewers and the listeners, the downloaders, the streamers, everybody. It was a lot of fun, man, and good luck on that wide receiver pick. I'll be waiting to see what you do with it. I do want to give an update on the midnight draft. We have one spot remaining. The draft starts in 45 minutes. I'm commissioning. Jump in right now if you want to play for $1 million and compete against the likes of Ferrell Elliott and Cacey Taylor in this contest. You can do so. One more spot available tonight. Ferrell, the KFFSC main event. Which that reminds me, I got to register for that slow draft right now. Are we still have spots open, or do I got to sign up for the next one now?
I think there's spots open.
Okay, I'm going to do that right
now.
now.
I think you might have already registered for it.
Did I really?
I don't know.
No, I'm not in it. I'm going to join it right now, which means there will only be 2 more spots left in the kickoff division, which is a slow draft. Join that right now. KFFSC.com is where you want to go for that. Compete against me. And I don't even know who else is in that league, but I know it's a lot of luminaries, a lot of people that pay attention to this show as well. Draft live at Louisville, draft live in Cincinnati, draft online with the KFFSC. Ferrell, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Appreciate it, dude. We'll talk to you again real soon.
See you, buddy.
That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. KFFSC.com is where to go for that. Apologies to the emailers. We went way over time tonight, but we will get to those emails next week. I do want to thank Cacey Taylor, Ferrell Elliott, the Fantasy Football Players Championship, Rob, who was engineering this broadcast remotely in Colorado this week. Thank you so much, Bryce. Bryce, who was doing that, and then Rob, our producer and our mutual friend as well. We will be back next Friday at 10/9 Central. As a reminder, we have a ton of stuff going on with the FFPC audiovisual content creation division right now. You saw this past Tuesday, Tommy Island himself, Tommy Heron, joined me on the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. If you missed that, rotoviz.com/podcast, or you can watch a replay on any of the FFPC social channels. And we will do another RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown the second week of July. Steve Highfill will be my guest on that, a guy who has won double-digit leagues in the FFPC over the course of his career. So that's what's going on there. Coming up on Tuesday, as if you follow us on X, you already saw this, we will have live draft coverage, whatever the format will be. FFPC Best Ball, Fantasy Pros Championship, FFPC Main Event, every Tuesday through the rest of drafting season. And I know we got like 3 months to go on this, but we're going to have live draft coverage every Tuesday, a rotating cavalcade of hosts. Myself, Aiden LaCourie, Dave Tripoli, surprise guests will be on as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. So check that out Tuesdays going forward right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. In case you missed Thursday nights, last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network, watch that on any of the BSN socials, the BSN website, or the FFPC socials. Ryan Reynolds, no, not the actor, the guy who is the wunderkind from Establish the Run award season, and player profiler who he just, we actually broke the news on the show last night that Ryan had signed on with Player Profiler to create content for them. He was my guest last night. We chopped it up. We had a blast. It was a lot of fun, and we learned a lot too. If you were wondering how to exploit the NFL schedule for fantasy purposes, watch that back. It was a lot of fun. We are back live at 7 p.m. this coming Thursday with sports gambling podcast Ryan Kramer, a guy who has participated in the FFPC Pros versus Joe as the main event and many other FFPC leagues over the years and won a lot of them. He will be my guest for the full 2 hours that night. If you're looking for action, myffpc.com, your home for the FFPC main event, the Best Ball Championship, and of course the Superflex Best Ball Tournament as well. You can get in the Superflex Tournament as little as $35 for the entry fee there. You can win $100,000 there, $300,000 in the Best Ball Tournament, and a $1 million grand prize in both the Fantasy Pros Championship and the FFPC main event. You can also play in the FFPC Empire Leagues and Dynasty Startups. If you want to play in that, you can do so right now over at myffpc.com. Those Dynasty Slow Drafts are starting up. The next batch of them start up tomorrow morning, so sign up there. myffpc.com. If you got $5, we got a draft for you. Sign up there right now. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and get notified every time we go live. The next time will be Tuesday night. Live draft coverage starting, I believe, at 8:30 Eastern time, and I believe that is a three-way with me, Aiden LaCourie, and Dave Tripoli. It's going to be a blast. Join us then. We will talk to you then. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
I take that back. I am stupid. Ferrell was right. I actually already am in that. I think Bill Hollywood was asking me which KFFSC main event I'm in. It's the Kickoff, which is a 6-hour slow draft. You can register for that now at kffsc.com and compete against me. Plenty other luminaries in there. Again, I have not looked at it yet, but that's where you can sign up for that. 3 teams remaining in that. Just a real quick message this week. I don't say it enough on this show, but your loved ones are going to put up with a lot with you this summer in drafting season. And even if they are not in your immediate family, maybe they're in your extended family, maybe they were in your immediate family, and now they become your extended family because you've grown up or what have you, and you don't live with them anymore. Tell them how much you love them. Remember to hug them and tell them that you'll always be there because they are family. You will always be there for them. Can't emphasize that enough, and I don't say it enough on the show. That is the message I leave you with tonight. Happy drafting. Good luck, and we will talk with you again next week.